We've got Alastair McDermid from the Airports Commission Director at Gatwick, who's going to speak for 15 minutes or so, and then we've got the usual supporter for 3 minutes in the guise of Jeremy Taylor, who's Chief Executive of Gatwick Diamond Business, and then an opposer of the scheme, who is Crispin Blunt MP for Reigate, who's going to speak for 3 minutes on why Gatwick's a bad idea. So can I ask Alastair to come up and give us his views? Alastair, give him a hand. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As the Airports Commission's papers show, the global economy is undergoing major structural and geographic change, and with it, the aviation industry is also changing. So I'm not really here to talk about the way the aviation industry is changing today, but just to make the point before starting that the world is changing quite a lot in the aviation industry, and we have to look forward and take account of that when we're thinking about the questions that we're debating today. Now, it's only 10 years since the Air Transport White Paper was published, and there was barely a mention in there about low-cost carriers, who now account for about 55% of short-haul domestic and European air travel, which is in itself by far and away the biggest air travel market. And I don't think that Dubai or the Middle East hubs were even mentioned at all. But we welcome at Gatwick the Airports Commission's recognition of the importance of this debate today to the whole of the UK, and providing regional access, UK regional access that is, to and through London. There's some proposals that we are making to the Commission with regard to that issue. Now today I'd just like to focus on the land topic, which needs to be covered in this session. And firstly, I'd like to explain why creating 2 world-class gateway airports within the London system by putting the next runway at Gatwick delivers the best solution for London and the South East region. Secondly, I'd like to explain why our public transport solution is best suited supporting regional development by matching growth and jobs to housing provision. And thirdly, I'd like to explain why Gatwick provides most certainty that those benefits can be enjoyed. Not only that, those benefits can be enjoyed quite a bit earlier at Gatwick than they could be enjoyed at any other location. And that is because Gatwick is a much more deliverable solution. I'd just like to say a bit more about that in these next few slides. These are the 6 headings that the Airports Commission asked us to submit our refreshed scheme design under. And what they show in very short summary form, what they show is that Gatwick provides most capacity, it provides it sooner, and it provides the greatest economic benefit of the options. It also shows that our master plan is best suited to providing the airport facilities that passengers want and the efficiency that the airlines need to make profits. Thirdly, it's relatively easy to construct. And it's the least it can be delivered at least environmental cost, despite being a project on the scale of the Olympics. Now let's explore some of those points in a little bit more detail. Our proposal builds on Gatwick's strengths. Our geographical position south of London is best at the most strategic level, as it avoids overflying central London. Today, we're achieving strong growth, the strongest growth of any of the London airports. And at the same time, we're providing the highest quality of service that the airport has ever provided under its new ownership. And today's results, our annual results are out today, show that very clearly. We're more convenient for more people in the southeast of England in terms of future demand for air travel. And the reason for that is our studies show that if you look at the weighted average travel time for people to get to the airport and then get through the airport, given that demand comes from London and the rest of the southeast of England, then there is at least an hour's saving time for passengers on average with a Gatwick solution. And that has significant economic value in its own right. Just say a little bit about our two-runway master plan that we've submitted and talk through some of the benefits of a Gatwick solution. Today, Gatwick is a compact, two-terminal, one-runway airport, and by any measure, it's the most efficient airport anywhere in the world. We aim to retain the best features of Gatwick in our two-runway master plan and to build on them. Firstly, there'll be a world-class public transport interchange, which will serve Gatwick and the whole of the Surrey and Sussex region and into Kent as well, by providing rail services 24 hours a day. And that will help us deliver our 60% modal share split to public transport, 60% of our passengers coming by rail in future. And that's close to the best you will find anywhere in the world. And even today, Gatwick has got the highest use of public transport of any UK airport, and it's the best connected UK airport by rail, not just to London, the South East, but increasingly up to Peterborough and Cambridge and up the West Coast Main Line as well. For the design of the airport, you'll be able to get from that public transport interchange to the nearest terminal in 2 minutes and to the two other terminals in 7 minutes. We'll have a single front door, whether you're coming by public transport or to a long stay car park located in one single location. The design of the airport is designed to get you from curb to gate in 30 minutes, if you wish, and from the gate to the curb in 45 minutes, if you wish to do that. And yes, there are transferring passengers at Gatwick as well, and we've designed the airport so that you can transfer from any gate to any gate in not more than 45 minutes. And in fact, the vast majority of passengers will be able to transfer between gates in around 20 to 30 minutes. That's as good as it gets anywhere in the planet. So we'll be delivering here a 95 million passenger capacity airport, around twice the long-term capacity of a single runway. The master plan also takes something I haven't heard mentioned in relation to the other proposals. It takes around 35 hectares of existing commercial space south of the airport. That space that we've initially chosen to re-provide within the expanded airport boundary, but actually I think there will be better locations for it in other parts of the locality. And we're working with those companies and with the local authorities in order to identify the best solutions for each of those companies. There are some other natural advantages that Gatwick also enjoys. It's relatively simple to build. That's because it's mostly a greenfield site. And it's a greenfield site within a safeguarded area and in which development has largely not taken place since that safeguarding. One of the previous speakers talked about facilities near Heathrow having to be relocated. I remember 25 years ago when I presented to the then BAA board the proposal to build Terminal 5 at Heathrow, where the Thames Water Authority sewage treatment work site existed previously. And we recognised then that the existence of that site and the need to re-provide that site was a major impediment to the quick and cost-effective delivery of Terminal 5. And it for sure contributed to the 13 years that it took us to get planning permission for Terminal 5. And it also contributed to the further 7 years that it took us to build Terminal 5. And there's nothing on that scale in the Heathrow locality, but including the waste-to-energy site that's been mentioned earlier, there are another 39, as I understand it, landfill sites and possibly other developments too that have to be relocated, not just taken away, re-provided. And not only is the Gatwick development around half of the cost of a Heathrow proposal, probably in my view a bit less than half of the cost of the Heathrow proposal, we can deliver the first phase of that development for about a quarter of our total £7.8 billion cost. And that's important because it gives us flexibility to design the airport for changes that we don't yet know about in the aviation industry. It's very, very hard 20 years out to know exactly what facilities people are going to be looking for. So it gives us flexibility for design reasons, but it also gives us flexibility for investment reasons as well, and makes our proposal the most affordable and financeable of the options. What it really boils down to is that Gatwick provides the best solution for the aviation industry, the topic I'm not talking about today, although others have. And the reason why we suggest that the hub argument is so grossly overstated is that today, 14% of people who are travelling through London are connecting on flights, and in the future, that will fall to less than 10% because of those changes in the aviation industry that I mentioned right at the start of this presentation. It also boils down to the fact that two competing gateway airports within the London system, including the other London airports, is the best way to provide UK regional connectivity to and through London as well. It's generally accepted that competition, and by this I mean both airports and airline competition, is the best way of keeping airfares down and the quality of service up. It's by far the quickest solution to deliver. It's the lowest cost by far. It's the least risky by far. And it's the most sustainable by far of all of the options. And it avoids over-concentration in a single mega hub airport and makes life more convenient for the people who want to use the airport. And it provides huge economic benefit for the whole of London and the South East region by rebalancing the economy and spreading the benefits in a way that a single mega hub airport does not permit. And let me just explain how that happens. The Thameslink service, which is really not terribly well advertised or understood, is coming. It will be completed within the next 3 to 4 years. And by 2018, will double the amount of capacity travelling available between London and Gatwick in obviously both directions. And that capacity will also triple, almost triple, by around the time or shortly after the time a second runway at Gatwick could open. So we will have a train leaving for London every 2.5 minutes with higher quality rolling stock, much better than anything that can be seen there today. It'll be air conditioned, it'll have toilets, and it'll have luggage space for air passengers, which is sadly lacking at the moment. And this is important because London's economy needs to be rebalanced away from the concentration in the west. The north of London is benefiting from HS2, redevelopment of King's Cross. The east has been benefiting from the Olympics and is continuing to do so. Gatwick can support economic growth and jobs in south and central London. Croydon's 15 minutes away by rail. Central London is 30 minutes away by rail. Places like St Pancras and Farringdon are 40 minutes away by rail. That's the sort of convenience that when we're talking about people who are investing in creating jobs, that's the sort of convenience they're looking for. And the good thing about the Gatwick solution is that people will be getting to the airport by public transport, not by road, as is often the case at Heathrow. Gatwick is also very well placed to provide jobs and employment for East London. Our estimate is that Gatwick can provide about 14,000 jobs or more in the East End of London. And it's very well placed to support other regeneration areas in south of London, like the Wandle Valley, for example. Gatwick can also support economic development in its own locality, in the Gatwick Diamond area, as it's referred to. Now, there is a mix of views in the local authorities that I speak to within that area. There are about 14 local authorities we're speaking to. Some are more interested in growth than others. And what we're trying to work through with them at the moment is the best way of providing the right balance between accommodating that growth and not giving rise to too much development pressure that the local authorities won't want. And the economic benefits are huge. In the end, this is always a trade-off that governments have to make between the scale of the economic benefits for the nation and the region against the environmental cost to the nation and the region. But make no mistake, the economic benefits are huge. We think the highest at Gatwick, and that's partly due to the fact that we can provide most airport capacity, which in turn translates into economic growth. We can provide that capacity earlier, as I've already said, but also because a Gatwick solution best secures lower fares. That has an economic value. Fewer delays, that has an economic value. And a much lower capital cost and a much lower environmental cost. Those two can be translated into economic values. So Gatwick can deliver huge economic benefits to London and the South East region more generally. We estimate that a total of 22,000 jobs related to the airport can be provided in the Gatwick region, and around 100,000 so-called catalytic jobs in the region more generally. Most of those jobs, for the reasons I've already explained, can be expected to be in London, but you can also expect some clustering in the Gatwick Diamond area, in those areas where some growth is being wanted by the local authorities. Those 22,000 jobs translate into about 9,300 houses in the locality. That equates to an average, that's over the life of the Gatwick project as it grows up to its full use, and that translates into an average of about 400 houses per annum during that period of time. That equates with about 5% of all of the houses that would be required in the South East region in any event, in that same area, in any event over that same period of time. One of the main problems in London at the moment, in the South East, is the slow provision of houses. There's a requirement for more houses than is being delivered at the moment. And the reason for that, as was referred to as one of the previous speakers, is that we're not matching jobs to housing. There's a huge amount that Gatwick can do to match jobs to housing in London, central London, South London, the Gatwick Diamond area, and the South Coast. So to conclude, I'd like to say a few words about the environmental differences. At Gatwick, we've estimated that some 11,000 people would fall within the so-called noise contour. The Heathrow equivalent figure, as far as I can make out from Heathrow's documents, is about 60,000 people. In total, Gatwick would have about 14,200 people falling within those noise contours. The equivalent Heathrow figure is hard to define from the documentation that's been published, but it appears to be around 170 to 190,000 people. And the number of newly affected people would be much greater, too, than a Gatwick solution. But as has often been said, and this is a point I personally agree with, those noise contours they're far from a perfect indicator of the nuisance that is caused by aircraft noise. And different descriptors are used, and if you use those different descriptors, the equivalent numbers for Gatwick might be of the order of 20 to 30,000, but for Heathrow would be somewhere between 750,000 and 1 million. But we nevertheless do, of course, have to take seriously the impact that we would be having, because the proposal needs to be acceptable in its own right, not just compared to the other options. And that's why Gatwick's taken a leading position in the noise insulation grant scheme that it has put forward, and which we've said that we would extend to a second runway. It's also the reason why Gatwick, for the first time in relation to any major piece of transport infrastructure that I'm aware of in the UK, has stepped into the space of talking about compensating people who are adversely affected locally for the economic benefits that are felt very widely. And I'm talking there about our council tax initiative, where we've said that we would pay the first £1,000 of council tax for people who are affected by noise year on year on year for as long as those people live in that house. And we've yet to see Heathrow's response to those two propositions that we've put forward. There are also concerns about urbanisation. In my view, those concerns are real, but they're overstated, significantly overstated. But we do need to take them seriously, again. That's why I'm asking you to recall that the development at Gatwick would take place within the safeguarded area that's been set aside for many years, that the housing provision that goes along with it is limited, as I've just described, and would not arise for another 10 years, and that the surface access solution that we've put forward is very well placed to spread the economic benefits and therefore the development pressures that go along with it. So to conclude, the 3 points that I'd like to leave you with today are that providing 2 major gateway airports in London and rebalancing the economy provides the best solution for the southeast region. Our surface access strategy provides a ready-made solution to spreading those economic benefits and spreading the development pressures as well, and it's already coming along. And finally, it is the most deliverable solution at the least cost with the greatest economic benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Alastair. Thank you very much, Alastair, again. It's obviously Gatwick, as I can tell after that. Now, our second speaker is Jeremy Taylor, who's the Chief Executive of Gatwick Diamond Business. Jeremy's going to give us 3 or 4 minutes on why they think that Gatwick is going to be the best solution. So, Jeremy, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jeremy Taylor from Gatwick Diamond Business. We're a membership organisation of organisations and businesses in and around the Gatwick Diamond area, which, despite earlier allegations, is actually a very desirable business environment. It's a £20 billion economy. It's home to around 45,000 businesses. It's got an employed workforce of 350,000 and is headquarters for about 100 UK, Ireland and European businesses. Names include Canon, Nestlé, Amex and Pfizer and Unilever. So we're very well placed as an economic centre for growth, and we look to Gatwick Airport to grow. My own organisation, we represent about a seventh of that population, that working population. And just to give you the context, earlier this year, once Davis announced that Gatwick was going to be in the running, we canvassed the members and we received 92% support from the business community for a stand that supports a second runway at Gatwick Airport. So we have a very strong voice, we are very aware of the benefits. But I think what's interesting in these debates is that often those who support the economy will recognise, acknowledge, and we will take Gatwick to task on the environmental and social impacts. Those who oppose tend to ignore the economic benefits. And it's the economic benefits I want to talk about today. Piece of history. Everyone's had some history today, so I thought I'd provide my own. This is a document from 1943, and I wasn't there, but I believe in 1943 the war wasn't going quite as well as we ended up, which was good. But there was a paper in a magazine called Aeronautics published, I've got copies if you'd like it, which actually cites Gatwick as an exemplar of where post-war aviation should serve London. Heston was mentioned, and a site in Essex as well, but Gatwick was held up as this example for growth, for development, for connecting London and the UK to the rest of the world. It was also commended as being one of the first airports in the world to have an integral railway station, allowing good public surface access to the airport, and we see that continuing today. But I'm very biased. I hold my hand up. I'm very biased about my support for Gatwick Airport. I have a vested interest. Without a growing Gatwick Airport, then I can't run a business, and I can't employ 3 people. And I'm going to talk a bit about the other businesses that are in and around the Gatwick Diamond. This just gives you the context of the Gatwick Diamond. You'll see we're very well connected. It is a big economy. We can think things, we can make things, we can store things, and we can ship things. And the 4 companies I want to touch on illustrate the location decisions that people make around airports and why Gatwick has been chosen First one is a company called Straumann. They make dental implants, nothing to do with aviation. They had to make a location decision based on connectivity to their market, which is dentists in Europe, Northern Europe, UK and Ireland. Gatwick was chosen because it gave them connectivity. Nestle, at the other end of the dental scale, you might argue, about 1,000 jobs moved from Croydon down to Gatwick. Number of factors involved in that location decision, but a key output is the fact that as a result of being next door to Gatwick, they can get to China, they can get to Madrid. Really important for that business to be able to travel the world with the products and services they have. Elekta, a company that you may not have heard of, but they're one of the 2 leading companies in the world in oncology, and the other happens to be in Crawley as well, Varian. So we've got 2 world leaders in the treatment of cancer, both based in Crawley, both using Gatwick as connectivity to the world. I cite Elekta because they're just about to invest £100 million in developing a site adjacent to the airport, bringing a further 500 jobs to the Crawley and the Gatwick Diamond region. And the final one I want to talk about, again, non-aviation, a company called CGG Veritas, oil and gas exploration company. Moved to the region in the 1980s when Gatwick was the oilman's airport. You could fly to South America, southern United States, North and West Africa, the Middle East, North Sea. You can still reach a lot of those destinations, and it's true. North America, South America, hard to reach. But those routes are coming back. Those destinations are coming back. And when we see the foreign owners of those companies looking at their next location decision, we need to have a growing, developed Gatwick, giving those businesses the reason to locate locally and bring quality jobs to the Gatwick Diamond region. In my mind, if we don't see Gatwick expanding, then those businesses will make those location decisions. And if they're presented with the choice between, say, West London or Kent, then actually they'll choose Dubai or Istanbul, because they won't see, bearing in mind the air passenger duty regime that we live in, plus the costs that I've seen cited for landing charges at either Heathrow or the Thames Estuary, we won't see those businesses thinking that the UK represents value for money. They will leave.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think we're there, right?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, our final speaker on Gatwick is an opponent of the scheme, Crispin Blunt, who's the quite local MP for Reigate. Crispin was elected to Parliament in 1990. He was a Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State in the Ministry of Justice when the coalition government was formed, but went right back to the backbenches in 2012 and is therefore able to speak quite freely for us just for a few minutes on why it shouldn't be expanded at Gatwick. Crispin.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a very good day for Gatwick Airport Limited. They just announced record profits, and I'm delighted that a well-led and well-run team is running the world's most successful single runway airport. And as such, it's a key part of the local economy, in balance with the town of Crawley that has grown up to support it, and just about in balance with all the surrounding communities and the people and infrastructure that are provided to support it. So for the people who live around Gatwick, either its closure or a second runway would either be catastrophic, either economically or environmentally. And equally, for the country, expansion at Gatwick is the wrong strategic decision. It should be blindingly obvious that a great city like London needs an airport with the ability to work 24/7 and with sufficient runway capacity to deal with the inevitable increase in air traffic and a fighting chance of remaining one of Europe's hub airports. That can only be found in the estuary, a decision our country has ducked for 5 decades, and I'm afraid I have no confidence we're not going to duck it again, despite the London Mayor's best efforts, but I hope your next presentation will convince everyone here of that. So far, Gatwick Airport Limited has shown the same astuteness in running a business as they have in making the case for a second runway. They've won business and Sussex County Council leaders to their cause. But of course, for local business owners, a new runway at Gatwick is a Christmas and birthday treat for decades to come. But for the people who live there, the consequence is a disaster for the local environment and surrounding communities. And we heard Alastair talk about matching growth and jobs to housing provision. And the latest Gatwick consultation, as we heard, suggests 22,000 on-site jobs, but 100,000 catalytic jobs. Well, in the 6 parliamentary constituencies around Gatwick, there is a grand total of 4,249 unemployed people. My constituency has the second highest unemployment rate of those constituencies at 1.4%. The local labour market is wholly saturated. The total unemployment, if you then include Croydon and Brighton and the 3 closest Kent constituencies, is 15,665 last month. So even if all the unemployed in commuting range of Gatwick were to fill these jobs, which of course is utterly fanciful, that's less than 10% of the total jobs that are going to be created by Second Runway at Gatwick. These jobs will be filled by people new to the area who will have to live somewhere. So the suggestion that the housing need is going to be only 9,000 houses is utterly unrealistic. Analysis done, I think, by Jeremy's own organisation suggested that 40,000 houses a while ago was rather closer to the mark. And if you then consider that neighbouring constituencies of mine like Horsham are currently mired in controversy over a proposal for 3,000 houses between Horsham and Crawley, you begin to understand the nature of the consequences if you are a local representative. It is a modest rehearsal for what would follow if we were going to have a second runway at Gatwick. In my own constituency, the borough of Reigate and Banstead has taken 7 years to agree a core strategy with the planning inspectorate as the borough fights to protect the environment locally from the housing numbers that the planning inspectorate are suggesting that would be required, and that is before we have the proposal for the second runway. There is then the small matter of the transport links. Many of my constituents commute into London. The London to Brighton main line is the busiest commuter line in the country. If you try to travel from Redhill to London to commute in peak hours, you are not in for a very comfortable journey. And with Gatwick proposing this massive increase in the use of rail lines to access Gatwick without a new railway line being proposed, and indeed additional capacity coming from Old Oak Common onto the same infrastructure, you can tell that this is going to bust the delivery of local infrastructure and make life extremely difficult for the people I represent. I don't have time to deal with the issue of roads, noise, with up to 50,000 people more being affected in rural areas, which will have a significantly greater impact on quality of life than in already noisy cities. The Gatwick proposal would deflect growth to the wrong part of the country where it's not needed. It would not reinforce the hub airport, and at the same time, it also would be part of the country ducking the strategic decision that it ought to be taking for the decades to come if we are to support London as a world-class city. Thank you very much.
There's a few things, you can remember them all as I do them, really, Alastair. Is there enough safeguarded land already? Who owns the safeguarded land? Will you have to CPO the safeguarded land? Just that one to start with.
There is a safeguarded area. It's been safeguarded following the, 2003 Air Transport White Paper.
Yeah.
It would have to be compulsorily purchased. We would have to do that in the same way that Heathrow would have to do that for their option.
You don't know who owns it?
There are a variety of different owners.
All right. So you could get it at what price? Would you have to pay airport price, or would you have to pay cornfield price?
Well, you know how this process works as well as I do. It's the pre-existing value of the land that is paid for. Yeah.
All right. I was interested in your remarks about the 35 hectares of commercial space which you clearly wish to move somewhere. Where would all that move to, do you think? On the edge of the airport or somewhere else?
In the absence of a fully worked out plan, we've allocated land within the expanded airport boundary, east of the railway, to re-provide that space. But actually, I think there'll be a better solution for that. I think depending on the particular type of use of that space, there'll be some void spaces in the existing locality, which some of those current people could be attracted to and directed towards. I think it's also likely that some of them will require some new space to be provided. It may be that that space can be provided off airport, where there is still some commercial development land.
Okay.
potentially
Doesn't
available.
your plan have one major flaw, which it doesn't include any houses?
I beg pardon?
Your plan doesn't include any houses. Do you think it should?
You mean the airport building houses?
Yeah. You know, you're building this, and Crispin has said there's just clearly not enough houses to support the workers. Why don't you include houses in the plan?
Well, one thing that we are in discussion with, as I said in my presentation, with local authorities, and one of the things that we're in discussion with them about is about how we can help financially deliver houses that are allocated already within local plans, and particularly in places like Croydon, but other places as well. And the issue that they tell us they face is getting the economics of it to work. So we are looking at that question.
But far simpler, surely, for you to CPO the land at existing use and then use it for housing.
I'm not quite following that.
You'd make a lot more money if you CPO'd the land and built houses on it than you will by letting the local authorities
Yeah,
build
well, we're
them.
an airport developer. We don't build houses, we build airports.
Okay, I think
This
that's
is- but-
Crispin, yes.
But this goes right to the heart of the problem with this proposal. You're going to need to build something the size of Crawley that's already there in order to service a second runway.
Yeah.
Where's it going? The area of Sussex to its south is a beautiful part of the country, and obviously there will be enormous defence of that area from the people who live there already. And the area to the north, my constituency, is London's metropolitan greenbelt. It's designed to stop London joining up with Brighton. Well, so you can't really be running straight over greenbelt policy to build there. So are we really expecting to put another Crawley into Sussex? Which is why the support they have managed to secure from certainly West Sussex County Council at first cut is highly unlikely to survive as the full consequences of the then rams itself home to locally elected politicians.
Go on. Sorry.
So locally elected politicians again will in the course of the Davis's Commission work over the next year will begin to wake up to the full scale of what will be in store for local people if this proposal goes ahead.
Alastair.
We haven't plucked our 9,300 houses out of the air. We've been working with the local authorities. And as Crispin knows, it's the local authorities who deliver these houses, not the county authorities or the national government or airports for that matter. So our assessment of it is thought by them to be a reasonable assessment of it. And the idea that Gatwick needs another town the size of Crawley to support it is completely off the scale. You know, you can look at history of T5, Stansted, Gatwick when it was originally developed. You won't find any precedent for that sort of suggestion at all.
I just think you make an awful lot of money if you... Anyway, I won't. You're not house builders. Jeremy, yes.
I think that's the stake for another conference. I think I want to take Crispin, I want to take you to task on this 40,000 figure, which came from a report that was commissioned by the West Sussex County Council, Crawley Borough Council and Gatwick Diamond Initiative. It wasn't our organisation that funded it. That was a rumour spread, which hopefully has been corrected. The 40,000 houses issue was because when the authors of that report were asked at the last minute, oh, and by the way, what do you think the housing numbers could be? They said, well, if you add absolutely everything up and you completely don't constrain anything, it might be 40,000. And this is an economic consultancy that was asked to comment on housing numbers. Since then, there's been a number of reports, so that's strictly out of date. What I would say on the housing issue is that we've got, and you cited the unemployed in your area, and you're absolutely right. Nicholas Soames has written to me, and he can shout in a letter, which is quite remarkable. But he's written to me and told me why I'm naive. I feel I've arrived. But yes, you've got fantastic unemployment, but the coastal strip...
Employment.
Yeah, well, you've got fantastic employment. But the coastal strip, which is currently experiencing very, very severe unemployment and will be connected by the new rail services, is an opportunity, and that's why we see East Sussex is so forcefully behind Gatwick Airport. I think in terms of the local population as well, I was talking to councillors in Hawley, which I think is your constituency. No, just to the south. So Hawley is a lovely little town. It's just adjacent to Gatwick Airport. And in the build-up to the recent election, they were going out on the doorstep, talking to residents, and the finding from councillors, and it's Councillor Mike George has gone on record with this, saying the majority of residents are in favour of a growing Gatwick Airport by a factor of 2 to 1. And that's what they found unofficially on the doorstep. So we are seeing that there is a quiet majority of people who are in favour. They recognise the economic impacts. As I said before, they recognise the environmental impacts, and that's why we do pressure Alastair on issues as well around the land use and around various issues that affect all of us. But it's important that we get that balance and not just pluck figures.
Last word from you, Alastair. What will you do if Heathrow wins? You just carry on and build a second runway if you want, can't you?
Well, it depends what the government's policy is at the end of the day. If the policy is supported by government based on the Airports Commission's current view that there is need for one new runway in this period, so nobody should be in any doubt. There aren't going to be two runways. The Commission have made it very clear that there's a need for one new runway. The question is where does it go, and that's why we think our proposition is the best.
Yeah, but
if Gatwick does get, if Heathrow does get it, then Gatwick will continue as it does. We will probably lose some traffic. There'll be a loss of some employment. It'll be bad for the local economy. And I think if you only have to look back to the time of the so-called open skies, when airlines moved from Gatwick to Heathrow, you can detect there's going to be some drop in traffic. Actually, we think the drop in traffic will be limited by the fact that many of the carriers that we've got at Gatwick, we don't believe will be attracted to using
Last
Heathrow.
word from Crispin before we stop.
Well, there's this simple fact: 122,000 new jobs, local unemployment 15,000 if you count everybody. Well, these people have got to live somewhere. And to say it's 9,000 houses because you've had a conversation with the local authorities, I would actually rather believe the economists who are suggesting 40,000. I don't think that's enough. And we are already coping in all of the constituencies. Housing growth and the environmental issue is the voters' priority in order to protect their quality of life. And that's with the economic growth that is already expected within the local area. It is housing that is the constraint.
All right, thank you very much. I think we'll just bring this one to an end now, if you don't mind, and give our panel a good clap.